I recently received a package in the mail from artist Jeffrey Carr. What did this former dean of the Pennsylvania Academy of the Fine Arts send me? A wonderful book of life drawings that he's done over the decades, with lots of reproductions and an essay that he wrote. I asked Jeff to read it aloud as we look at his art. And please understand that all the art you're about to see is by Jeff Carr, unless otherwise designated. And although Jeff talks about his childhood and school days, all his art in this movie is from his professional career.
Every artist says they drew as a kid, but all kids draw. Most of them stop, but I didn't. Like all kids deemed artistic, I cartooned, and then I learned to draw figures from comic books. In high school, drawing from a fellow student in my art and design class was a revelation. And I remember drawing the nude model in huge auditorium-sized drawing rooms at some adult education place somewhere. Guys at the front in baseball hats, ogling the tired and worn-out-looking models. Drawing as a lifelong calling was introduced to me at my university. I resisted the knowledge that I was an artist. I wanted to be an intellectual, and I thought, mistakenly, that artists didn't read. It was drawing that revealed to me who I am. I came of age as an artist in the 70s, when the importance of drawing was still taken for granted. To learn to draw, it was assumed that you drew from observation. Figure drawing was essential. At the University of California at Santa Cruz, where I began my journey as an artist, we drew from the model almost to the exclusion of anything else. The models were our fellow students, usually women. The importance of drawing from the nude was not questioned in those days, nor was the custom of drawing from female, and only occasionally male bodies. When the model didn't show up, we drew piles of shoes or each other. Drawing from observation was considered an essential component of every artist's training. Later, at the New York Studio School, the practice of drawing was elevated to a cult, an essential doctrine, the basic fabric of art making. Drawing was about observation, about learning to see. But see what? Visual forms, spatial relationships, mass, volumes, and contours. How to relate details to the whole. Relationships of line, gesture, and tone. Expression. Quality and quantities, angles and distances. Nobody asked about or cared much about what a drawing meant. That was considered peripheral. What a drawing meant was how it looked. Despite the prevalence of the new literature of art theory, studio art making was still considered to be visual, not literary. Philosophy and aesthetics were for the critics and for the art historians. The so-called New Realism was being actively discussed when I was in art school in the 1970s. In New York, I saw all these artists firsthand. Philip Pearlstein, Leland Bell, Leonard Anderson, Gretna Campbell, Neil Welliver, Fairfield Porter, Jane Freilicher, Alex Katz, Jack Beale, William Bailey, Alice Neal, Rackstraw Downs, Richard Estes, Nell Blaine, and so on and so on. I love the California figurative artists, Diebenkorn, Park, Oliveira, and Bischoff. I love Lucian Freud and the London School. And of course, there were all the museums. This encouraged me to reject the fashionably post-painterly abstraction, the formalism, and the conceptual art of the 70s.
Viewers, you need to understand that in conceptual art, it's the idea that counts. Once that idea is arrived at, its execution in artists' Solowitz's words, is a perfunctory affair. That is not the case with Jeff's drawings, which continually evolve as they're made.
At Yale Grad School, I was fortunate to have as mentors artists who encouraged these interests, especially William Bailey, who drew from the nude model and encouraged figuration as something more than just academic naturalism. And Bernard Chait, who authored one of the best drawing textbooks I know of. I once complained to Chait that my drawings were better than my paintings. He responded that drawing is easier than painting. But is this true? I don't think so. I know of many, many wonderful painters, but very few artists do drawings that interest me. From art school, I learned that drawing was the grammar and syntax of space and form, volume and arrangement, gesture and tone. Space was paramount. Not the space of illusionary picture-making, but pictorial space, which arises from pictorial organization. Mere illusionistic form-making, what non-artists would call realism, was barely taken seriously. What was serious was what somebody once called significant form. This is high modernism. Cézanne, not Sargent. Matisse, not Bouguereau. All art is essentially abstract. This means that it expresses reality, not just describes it. This was considered an essential teaching. But is it true? Not completely, but it has an element of truth. It's not just what you draw, it's how you draw it. The subject matter is only a pretext. It's only an inspiration for the drawing. This was Cézanne's great insight. Nobody cares what Mont Sainte-Victoire actually looks like, but everybody cares what Cézanne's painting looks like. This is not to dismiss the subject matter. My subject matter is figures and faces, and this inspires me to draw. Drawing from actual models in a classroom or my studio was the basis for my work as an artist. I drew and painted still life and landscapes, but the figure is the center of my universe. For me, this has been the female figure. There is a scene in the movie Titanic in which the male protagonist is drawing his lady love in the nude. This is the popular conception of drawing the nude, as a prelude to sex. Is the practice of drawing nude models in some way sexual? Of course it is. It's silly to pretend otherwise. The body is sexualized. But drawing the nude rarely leads to sex. That would ruin the drawing session. My mentor, William Bailey, who drew and exhibited beautiful drawings of young female nudes, was once challenged about this practice. The question implied, why not men? Why not old people? Why not animals or plants, for that matter? Well, he replied, I'm a heterosexual man, and this is what interests me. Well, he interested a lot of artists throughout history. As Kenneth Clark points out in his famous book, The Nude, artists depict the nude for all kinds of reasons, not just sensual beauty, but this is what I depict: sensual beauty. My models were always partners and collaborators, like actresses in a movie. A successful modeling session produces memorable drawings, like a director and actress creating a scene from a movie. It's a highly charged, intimate, and strictly professional working relationship. My favorite models were few and far between. I've sometimes forgotten their names. But they were never anonymous. It's like being photogenic, and you can't tell ahead of time how it will work. I no longer work from the life model for all kinds of reasons. I work from photographs, as many artists do. I no longer work with the traditional paper, ink, charcoal, and pencil drawing media. I draw with oil paint. But I love to depict the figure. It's a magnificent subject to draw or to paint. Both in a formal and emotional sense, it remains the center of my practice as an artist. A note on the self-portraits. Why do some artists produce so many self-portraits? Insecurity, bravado, arrogance, self-regard, spiritual doubt. All of these, I suppose. This intense self-regard is a fascination with the self with a capital S. Max Beckmann, in his famous essay, Letters to a Woman Painter, said, quote, "Perhaps then we can find ourselves and see ourselves in the work of art. Ultimately, all seeking and aspiration ends in finding yourself, your real self, of which your present self is only a weak reflection. There is no doubt that this is the ultimate, the most difficult exertion we poor men can perform." Unquote. My later self-portraits sometimes include quotations that reflect meditation and study in the Dzogchen and the Advaita traditions. There is a famous quote from a Zen master named Dogen that might apply to drawing. Quote, "To study the way is to study the self. To study the self is to forget the self. And to forget the self is to be enlightened by all things." Unquote.
Thanks, Jeff. I just have a few final things that I'd like to say. Jeff's book includes drawings of some people I know. Jeff himself, obviously, but also his late wife, Laura, who died of ALS in 2018. She was a kind and wonderful person. In this one, Laura is cradling their daughter, Charlotte. No longer a baby, Charlotte just made Jeff a grandfather. And there's also this guy, one of Philadelphia's greatest artists, Scott Noel. Though Jeff did his drawing of Scott years ago, he told me that he believes Scott has aged into the likeness. You can follow Jeff on Instagram at Jeffrey Carr Art and visit his website, jeffreycarrart.com. In addition to his drawing book, he has two others, Nude, paintings of the figure, and Beach, paintings of Southern California. All three are available for purchase through his website. Finally, just as I began working on this movie, it snowed. My original beginning of the movie had me complaining that Jeff would never have to do this. But then the California fires began. Jeff lives south of LA and is fine. But he and I both want to express our sincere condolences to all the people who have lost so much in California.